Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of the Writer's Block. Today we are pleased to have with us Bob Hyldburg, who is a experienced and expert business consultant and also a public speaker. But today we're going to focus on his experience with our beloved and lately beleaguered New England Patriots, for whom he has served as a photographer in the end zone or above the end zone for about 13 years. And his work can be found indoors in the Patriots Hall of Fame and also on the Untold Patriot Stories podcast, which you should all check out. He's been capturing images and stories about the team for many, many years. And with that, he has put together his latest book, Relive Patriots History, 6-time world champions. And we want to talk to him today about how the book came together and his just how he came to be with the Patriots. So first, let's introduce him. Bob, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Yes.
Great to be here.
Thank you. So you grew up here, I take it?
Yeah, I grew up on the South Shore.
Okay.
Grew up in Bridgewater. Went to Bridgewater Rainham, graduated in '76. That's the spirit, you know.
Okay.
And then went to Northeastern and graduated with an accounting and business degree. But always been fascinated with stats, you know, having an accounting degree. So I liked numbers. I collected baseball cards and football cards. And I would go to autograph shows and kind of get the chance to meet like the Steve Grogans and the Russ Francises and the Stanley Morgans, guys in the 70s and 80s. And I would put together a little bio of all these guys at autograph shows, and eventually Steve Grogan called me Bob the Stat Man, and that's kind of it stuck for
you were
30 years. You know,
you got the blessing from the big man. That's pretty
it.
Cool. Were you going to games during your childhood?
Oh yeah,
a lifetime fan?
We would get the games. We'd go with my dad. My first game I ever went to Fenway Park in 1967, and my uncle knew Gino Cappelletti from business. So I met Gino Cappelletti on the field, in the infield, after a game. We lost 44-16. We got crushed by the Buffalo Bills. I still have the program.
Wow.
But, you know, to meet Gino Cappelletti, who 3 years prior to that was the MVP of the league, was a pretty awesome thing for a 9-year-old.
Yeah.
So I played football. My dad was the coach. So it's always been in the blood to play and understand football. And I love the teamwork and 11 guys playing, you know, together as a unit, all that kind of stuff.
So with all the inspiration you had from the games and meeting Gino and people and Steve and all the statistics, how and when did you decide to put it together into a book to share with other people? So
in '94, I was watching fireworks of a friend of mine, and we were going back and forth. Who's the greatest player to wear number 7, 8, 9, 10? We got to the 40s and 50s, and I was getting stumped because, I mean, how many people do you remember that wore the 40s and 50s? So I knew Gil Santos, the radio announcer from Rainham, and I called him and I said, is there a book that has all the Patriots uniform numbers? And he said, well, there's a media guide, and I got the media guide, and there was 19 guys that had NA next to their name. So I called the Patriots and said, what did this NA mean? He says, not available, we don't care. Okay, well, I care. I want to find out every player. So I started my quest of coming up with the uniform number of every single player that played in a game, even if they only played in one game. And it took me a while, about 15 years, to put all that together, and then a whole bunch of other stats like double laterals like we saw this year with Jacoby Meyer and Stevenson. And my first book came out in 2009, and it was called Total Patriots, 800 pages, and it chronicled all kind of stats and stories and trivia and player profiles. And so that book is being displayed at the Patriots Hall of Fame and has been there since then.
Wow, that's quite an honor.
And then I would do public speaking and different events at the Patriots Hall of Fame. And then Brian Morey, who was the executive director, came to me one time and says, you know, one of these years we want to put all that stuff that you have in that 800-page book in a computer display. So can you put that on like a different program so that when people come in, they can just go to a computer and say, show me Drew Bledsoe, or show me Gino Cappelletti and all their stats and maybe a little quirky thing that maybe they did. And there was 1,300 players that had played for the Patriots by then. Wow. So it took me a couple of years to put that together and come up with 100 and something different categories with 1,300 players, you know, and I found all uniform numbers of every single player, even if they played in one game. And then with that, once that was done, then this book came out. So now that you can get not only in the computer display, and it's on the 3rd floor of the Patriots Hall of Fame, but now it's in a book form too.
Not bad.
Yeah.
It's a great place to visit, and so to be able to take a little bit of it home is terrific. Talking about numbers, I have kind of a personal story, if I can share that.
Absolutely.
Years and years ago, I saw, it wasn't an official shirt, but it was a champion shirt with the right number, with the right colors, and it was number 7, which my lucky number is my birthday.
Yeah.
So my grandparents got it for me. I wore it all over the place. People would always ask me, is that Tony East? Is that Steve Grover? I was like, come on, you don't know 11 and 14? So years and years passed, and I went to an exhibition game. This is about 5-6 years ago. They're playing the Saints, which is my NFC team because I have family down there.
Oh, sure.
And there was a one-day quarterback whose name was Robinson, and sure enough, he was number 7.
Oh, that's
yeah.
cool.
So I tried to get his jersey, but he was in and out in one day. They didn't make it in the gift shop. But anyway, so talking about the radio announcers, you have a lot of kind of off the field categories in the book as well. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So one of the things, when you were growing up and playing the Patriots, and you talked early in the show, that beleaguered season. I mean, we've had some really rough seasons. So in 94, 95, 96, I'm doing the research. I'm meeting players. I'm meeting people that used to work for them. And some of the media people are like, why are you writing a book about the Patriots? Nobody cares. They had one playoff win in 1963. They didn't win any playoff games in the 70s. They won a couple playoff games in the 80s and then lost to the Bears 46-10. So every 10 years, we'd have one good season and then things would fall apart. But I met so many fans and so many people and so many players and family that they're like, we are so happy that you're bringing some of this stuff back, because it was a unit. A lot of these people that came from all different parts of the world to play for the Patriots kind of stuck around too. I mean, Steve Grogan's from Kansas and Steve Nelson's from Minnesota, and guys like that, they come here, they play, and then they set up a business here, and they've been here ever since, and they love it. And the fans love it too. So a lot of Relive Patriots History is open a page and then sit down with your dad, your uncle, your sister, whoever that really loves football, and you start a conversation. Remember this, and this Julian Edelman, pass, or to Damian Amendola in the playoffs. I mean, there's hundreds of those kind of stories in there. And because they weren't on TV, I put a whole little section in there of who the TV announcers were, because when the team wasn't selling out, excuse me, you had to go to Connecticut or Rhode Island to watch it. So it was just kind of a quirky thing that I put in there, that some of the years that they weren't on TV.
I'm sure you probably get asked a lot, but what are some of your favorite moments, either from games you were at or just throughout the history? What are some plays or some situations that really stick out to you?
Well, I think a lot of it is the last play of the game, or the first play of the game. I mean, Irving Fryer caught a touchdown pass in the first play of the game against the Bears, an 80-yard touchdown pass. So that doesn't happen that often. Kickoffs in the first play of the game, the opening kickoff, the return. It's only happened 3 times in the Patriots, and of course the Bills did it against us just a couple of weeks ago in the first play of the game. So those kind of things perk up. Onside kick recoveries. So I'm working in the Patriots press room in 2013, and we're losing to the Cleveland Browns, and we have to recover an onside kick and then go down and score. So Gostkowski kicks it, we recover the onside kick, so now all the reporters are writing, when was the last time Patriots recovered an onside kick? And I said, well, it was against Cleveland in a playoff game. I knew that off the top of my head. But they lost that playoff game. And so now they move down and they score. Amendola scores with 17 seconds left. They ended up winning the game. So now the reporters are looking at me, when was the last time the Patriots recovered an onside kick and won the game? Well, it was in my book, and it happened once in 1964. Against the Jets at Boston College. So those obscure things, even I'm sitting in the library and looking all this stuff up in game films that came to play, because, Patriots historian finds this obscure game in 1964. So this is the second time it happened, So those kind of fun moments kind of come back and say, all right, I'm glad that I did that.
How did you get into shooting and in the media room?
So I would call, when I was doing the research, I would call the Patriots on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, their off days, and said, can I come in and do some research? And like, who are you? I said, you don't work for a paper, you don't work for a news organization, you don't work for the radio. He said, I'm just a fan. I want to collect all these weird stats. So I would come in at 8 o'clock in the morning, sometimes 7:30, and be here all day. And I'd have a room like this, and they'd give me access to wherever I wanted to do. So after putting all this together, the NFL called all the teams and said, we need a group of people that know how to use a camera and are serious about statistics and are willing to stand out there for 4 hours taking pictures. And I would take about 1,000 pictures during the game. And our job was someone would look at our pictures so that they could identify all 22 players on every play. It's called player participation. So I'd be in one end zone taking pictures, there'd be another guy in the other end zone, and we take them. So if you looked at the pictures, you could see either the name or their uniform number, and someone looking at it, and they type it all in. At the end of the game, they'd have all the people that played and how many plays and what plays they were in, and it was for bonuses and incentives. You know, Brewski was on a kickoff team or the punt team. Hey, I want more money if I'm on the special teams, that kind of thing. So the Patriots called me and said, we understand you're serious about statistics. You know, we can teach you how to take pictures. They're just still pictures. You want a job? And I was like, all right, I'm in. So I did that for 13 years. And, there was only a couple of cold games, but I was out there for every home game for 13 years, seeing Brady and Edelman and Gronk and all those things.
Not a bad time to be up there.
Absolutely. And then, you know, you get there a couple hours before the game and you meet people, and there's a chance I've met over a couple hundred players, and and some of the stuff we're doing, this Untold Patriot Stories, is we're bringing some of these guys back and telling their stories behind the scenes of what Belichick's like, or in the locker room, or what it's like to win a Super Bowl, or any kind of obstacles that they had to overcome to get to the point where they are now.
Well, were there some players who were kind of surprised to hear from you, like surprised that there was interest?
Oh yeah, Maurice Hurst came up here one time, and he came up for an autograph show, and we asked him, can you be on our show? And he's like, I'm surprised that people remember me. And one of the things that he said is that Bill Parcells thought Maurice Hurst was one of his favorite players. So Bill Parcells, one of the Hall of Fame coaches out there, thinks Maurice Hurst is a player, and Maurice, we had that on the radio show, he's like, I'm glad the people, I'm from Louisiana, and I come back here and the people just adore me, and I'm so happy. And guys that, played maybe 20, 30, we had Rick Stanford on who played in the 80s. He's like, I'm so happy that I could share this, because when I come back once or twice a year, the fans just love to see the older players, because they connected with them. You knew that they weren't playing to win a championship, but you knew they gave their best effort, And they played hard for us, Garen Veras and guys like that are, come and gone, and moved back to where they are in Ohio, or wherever they're from, South Carolina. When they come back, they get a hero's reward, even though they didn't win. But they gave a great effort, and we cheered them on.
How do you think the Patriots fit in? I mean, Boston is a great sports town. Where do you think the Patriots place? Not just recently, but just sort of like, fan base, fan favorite, the kind of the Boston ethos, and the fact that they're not in Boston like the other three major teams. How do you think that affects them?
Oh, it did for a long time. I mean, growing up, you could go to a game to be 20,000 people. You can sit wherever you want, and sometimes you sneak in. They we just want people in the stands. And some of the radio stations, TV stations had to buy tickets 2 days before the game so it would be on TV. And back then the tickets were $5 or $10 or $15, so they put a few bucks into it so that they could get on TV. But yeah, the Celtics, in the 60s and 70s, and then with Bird, I mean, the Celtics were hot. The Bruins have their diehard fans no matter what. I mean, but that's Boston. And you get into Boston, you get on the subway, and you go to see them. To get down here, and when they built the stadium in 1971 here, that first exhibition game that they played here, there was an 8 o'clock game, and I've talked to people that didn't get home until 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning after that first game, because there was 30,000 people on a one side road, not like Route 1 is now, and although Route 1's not that great to begin with, it's a 12-hour day, but I met a guy that he took a girl, and it was his first date, and the father said, all right, the game's at 8, it gets over 11, so try to get her home by midnight. And it was in Attleboro, 15 minutes from the Foxborough. He didn't get her home till 2:30 in the morning. So the guy is out there, and the father is out there in a driveway pacing back and forth for like an hour and a half. Where is this guy going to, and he finally pulls in at 2:30 in the morning, and he says, what's this with 2:30? He says, well, that was traffic jam, 30,000 people. I don't believe you. I hope I never see you again. If I had a shotgun, and then 2 hours later when the news comes on at 6 in the morning, it took 7 hours to get out of the parking lot. Wow. There was no police. It was just like, it was a nightmare.
Wow. Wow. So you talked about how some of your relationships with the team were through business, like through your family, your own business. How has it gone the other way? What lessons can people learn from sports, and maybe from the Patriots in particular, the Belichick way of, do your job?
Right.
What are some of the business lessons that can be taken from the game?
Well, a lot of the guys that we're interviewing, we talk about the obstacles that they've had to overcome. And, they have somebody that motivates them or inspires them. And Tully Bat DeCan talked about, I said, what have you learned from Belichick? And he says, show up. He says, when you're there, participate. Be there spiritually, mentally, physically, engaged. Don't just sit in a meeting and say, yeah, this doesn't apply to me. You should show up, and that applies to business. When you're doing your job, do your job. I mean, that do your job really started with Willie McGinnis and Lloyd Malloy and Teddy Bruschi before Belichick was even here. And Willie McGinnis was the regulator. He just designed the culture and says, we're going to win. We got to really understand what our role is and to do your job. Not somebody else's, understand. So be aware of the situation, and there's always a learning, there's always growing, and just give it your best effort. And that's part of the whole idea of it, be disciplined. When Brady showed up, he would get to the practice field at 6 o'clock, 5:30 in the morning. So when Rodney Harrison came here in 2003 and 2004, he figured, all right, I've been around the league a little bit. I'm going to be the hardest worker on the Patriots. And the first day he showed up at like 10 past 6, and Brady says, hey, good afternoon. And he's like, what do you mean? He says, I've been here since 5:30. And so Brady was the hardest working guy there, and it takes hard work, but it takes discipline and teamwork and understanding what your role is and just giving you your best effort.
When you're doing your speaking engagements, is it exclusively about sports or about business, or do you mix them up, or does it just depend on the host and the situation?
Yeah, we tell stories that back up, what we're trying to get across. I mean, communication, We're doing something with Steve Nelson. And so Steve Nelson, when he was in high school, he goes to get recruited by the Minnesota Golden. So he's in Minnesota. He says, I'm going to play for Minnesota. And the coach is like, hey, we think if you play for our team, we're going to win the Rose Bowl. We're going to have one of the better teams in the league. And he says, Stan, you're going to be tremendous. And then Steve says, that's not my name. My name is Steve, He says, when you're doing your job, you make sure you focus on who you're talking to, And Steve didn't end up going to Minnesota. He went to North Dakota State and had a great career and came to the Patriots. But, if you're speaking, make sure you know who you're talking to, who your audience is. And obviously, Steve wasn't impressed by that coach.
So, you talk about your audience. How has the book found an audience?
Well, the thing about this book is that it gets into a lot of detail of different plays that maybe are obscure. And some of the players and some of the fans really, they think about like when they did this double lateral that we just did with Stevenson fumbling and kind of almost the last play of the game. Even though the game's tied, he laterals it back to Jacoby Myers and he throws it across the field. And so how many other double laterals have there been? And there was once that it happened with Gino Cappelletti and Ron Burton and Jim Colclaw. So it's only twice in 65 years. So just be aware of your situation, be aware of who you're passing the buck to, and be aware of where what you're doing with your delegations of your work. Make sure that they know what to do with it. And my eyes obviously didn't know what to do with it, and he throws it to the wrong guy, and then they lose the game in the last play of the game.
Yeah. Well, it's something about giving the effort. That's
yeah. I mean, you got to say he's trying to make a play, but don't be stupid. And that's part of one of the reasons the Patriots didn't really do so well in the 70s and 80s is they played stupid. If they had a kickoff return for a touchdown, you're looking for the flag. Someone did something stupid, or they went off sides, or they did something like that. And here we're coming back full circle again. Now we're playing undisciplined. We're doing penalties. We're not playing smart. We're turnovering the ball. We're throwing it to the other team on a double lateral. The teams that win don't have turnovers and don't play stupid. They're very, very disciplined. And of course, you got to have some athletes. But with Brady and Gronk and Edelman and certainly some of the other players, they played smart and efficient, and you didn't really make a lot of mistakes. And that's what business is. Don't make mistakes. Know your job. Do your research. Understand what you got to do. And then practice. Be relentless. There's a book that was written about Julian Edelman just being relentless. He would catch 200 or 300 passes from Brady in practice, and Edelman would be dragging, and Brady said, "Let's do 50 more." Just relentless. Just do it again. So if you're in a business, practice, role play, go over it again, do it again, get it down. Make sure that you get it cold. So when a situation comes in a game, it's all instinct then. In a situation, in sales, wherever you're in. You've done it so many times, it's just instinct.
So you talk about research. Obviously, there's been a ton of research. with this, one thing I get when I talk about the book that I did on the Ivy League is to say,
Right.
you must have more material. Is a volume 2 coming? So I'll turn that question to you. How much more do you have in the tank, and what do you hope to do with it?
Yeah, so I think part of what we're trying to do with Untold Patriot Stories, the podcast, is to bring some of these players back and talk about how they blocked that punt, or how they returned that kickoff, or how they intercepted it, and how it impacted the game, and what were they thinking when Dan Fouts was throwing the ball, or Marino, or Joe Montana, or any of the quarterbacks out there to read the play. I mean, in this game, Patriots history, Rodney Harrison had a huge interception against Ben Roethlisberger in a playoff game. And he knew Roethlisberger was going to throw it to a specific spot. And he decoyed. So he's like, he's going to throw it there. I know he's going to throw it there. And I'm 20 feet away, 30 feet away. He can't even see me. And as Roethlisberger goes to release it, he took full speed, intercepted, and ran it back 87 yards for a touchdown. So a lot of that is doing your research and coming back and knowing behind the scenes of, I knew what he was going to do. And he was a rookie at the time. But Ty Law, a lot of those kind of stories, we're going to have Ty Law on later in the year of what he did to Peyton Manning in the playoffs. Like, what are you doing there? Well, I knew what your tendencies were,
So is the podcast going to become a book of like actual discussions as opposed to just the stats?
Yeah, that's probably part of it. Down the road, we're going to take some of these lessons like Show Up, or It's Never Too Late. Antoine Smith, he got drafted later, but he says, I played 9 years, and my rookie year, I was 25 years old. Most rookies are a lot less than that. Never give up, We had Jabbar Shield on, that his grandmother was his biggest supporter, and he says, Grandma, if I ever make it to the Super Bowl, you're going to be in the stands. And that was the 28-3 where they came back against the Falcons. So imagine that your grandmother's been supporting you your whole life, and you come back in the biggest upset in the history of Super Bowl, and she's there on the field celebrating that with you. So those kind of moments are certainly a part of a story that we want to get out and maybe put in a book, once we finish some of these things and tie it all up in a nice knot.
So with the addition of the interviews and the live stories,
yeah,
what was something like the most surprising? You thought you knew it statistically, but you got a story about it that kind of changed the perspective on exactly what had happened.
That's a good question. I know one of the things that happened in the first Super Bowl. Well, actually, let's go to the 2003 Super Bowl. This was kind of a good story. So in 2003, a long snapper gets hurt, and then the backup snapper gets hurt. So now we need another backup snapper to snap the ball the last 2 games of the year and then into the playoffs. So they call this guy, Brian Kitchen, who is teaching and has been retired from football for 2 years. He's 35 years old in Louisiana. And the Patriots guy calls the school. The school interrupts his class. And he takes the call during class, and he says, yeah, this is the Patriots. We want you to come in and try out for a long snapper. You played for the Browns when Belichick was there. He knows you. And one of the kids in his class said, hey, teacher, the Patriots are the best team in the league. They're going to win the Super Bowl. Teacher, I think it's okay for you to go away and play for the Patriots. He comes to the Patriots, and he is so nervous that the night before the game, he cuts his finger accidentally. So he's got a cut finger, cutting a roll that was too hard or too soft. And he goes to Belichick. He says, I need 3 stitches on my snapping finger. And Belichick says, well, this is the Super Bowl. Just do it. Just snap it right. The first snap was not good. So we're talking to the holder, Ken Walter. And Ken Walter had been doing it for years. And he catches it on the bounce, and Vinatieri misses. And his first field goal that he'd missed in indoors. And so it comes down to the last play of the game, and he just kind of, Brian Kitchen says, all right, Lord, this is it. This is, if I don't do a good snap, we're going to lose this game. But he just kind of got peace. He got resolution. He kind of snapped it perfectly. We snapped it down, got it down, and we ended up winning the game. But here's this guy that come out of nowhere and becomes a hero, doing the perfect snap at the perfect time to win the game and beat Carolina by 3 points. So I didn't know that story. Yeah.
Not to get political, but what is the real story with Bob Kraft and Putin in the ring?
Yeah, Putin still has that ring. Yeah, yeah. It was
Next to
kind
his
of like,
Fabergé eggs and all that stuff.
yeah, he just kind of said, "Let me see it," and then it was gone. It's like, no, give it back. And, so yeah, that's just
Bob's a very giving guy, so yeah, I guess
Yeah, and the thing about Robert Kraft is that he gives the rings to the X-ray technicians, and he gives the rings to the secretaries and the whole staff that goes there. It's not just the players that get it too, So they get a big deal and their names on it and everything else. So there's a guy, Lou Imbriano, that is auctioning one off for the military, swim, for a mission. So he got 3 of them, and he says, I'm going to give one to the military so that we can raise some money for the military. So that's a pretty cool thing. So
yeah, that seems to be kind of the way the team is.
there's a lot of giving back, a lot of doing stuff for charity. And the Ron Burton Community Award, I've had a chance to develop relationships with Steve Burton over the years, 20 years since his father's passed. And there's a lot of stuff that comes back with the Boston Patriots that people really resonate. We've got different Facebook groups for the AFL, the 60s and 70s. There's still a lot of people that still want to talk about what happened in the 60s and 70s because you were there and it was a special moment and you're a kid and with your dad or whatever. So that's a lot of what I'm trying to do with this book, is bring those special memories back with people.
Where do you think the team's headed? We in another red shirt period, or do you see hope?
There's hope. There's always hope. I mean, the Giants were 9-7. They won the Super Bowl. You got to get hot the right season. You got to get healthy. You got to play smart. But there's some teams out there. I mean, it's going to take a couple of years. We got to get Mac some receivers. We got to get an offensive line, and we got to play smarter. But there's always hope. I went to so many games, not so much to see the Patriots in the 70s and 80s, to see the other team play.
Right.
And if Stanley Morgan got a touchdown, or Russ Francis made a big play, or Nelly made a big tackle, hey, that was pretty cool too. But you didn't go with the expectation they were going to win. You just went for a good time.
Well, fortunately, for those of us who need to wait a little bit, we have this great book, Relive Patriots History, and our great guest, Joe. Thanks for coming by, Bob, and thank everyone here for joining us on the Writer's Block, and we'll see you next time.
Go Pats.